It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 488. Tonight I'm joined by Ammo.
Hello.
Ashgar. Grace.
Hmm?
And Thalen. So every so often, like this has been a tradition since literally Grace's first episode. Where every so often, I think it was either 52 or 55, where we recorded a full-on spoiler show about the traumatic ending events of A Realm Reborn, the final patch before Heavensward. And then we did one for Heavensward. And I think we did a post-Heavensward one and a Stormblood and a post-Stormblood and a Shadow Walkers. And we've done multiple of these full spoiler shows throughout the years. And now Dawntrail has happened. And also we're realizing we've not recorded one for any of the post-Endwalker content.
Whoops.
So we're going to see where we get time-wise, and this may be multiple shows, but I'm going to let someone drive that has better chronological memory than I do. So Endwalker has happened, and we're journeying to the 13th.
Well, back up.
The back up a bit.
So Endwalker happens, we save the universe, and the Scions break up. No, really, the Scions don't exist anymore. Wink, wink. And then Estinian buys a map.
Yes.
Because
Estinian is notoriously bad with money.
Exactly. Yes. And it's a map to treasure. And he has us come with him to go find this treasure. And so we break into this vault, and we make our way through the vault and get to the end to discover that actually all of this vault belongs to Vritra.
I mean,
it belongs to the dragon who is in charge of.
We just broke into our friend's vault.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Luckily, he's very understanding about it. But
slightly
also,
mad about all the stuff we broke on the way in, though.
We broke a lot of stuff on the way in, yes. And
all these fail-safes and precautions.
And protected at the very end of the vault is a void gate.
It's a portable hole.
Yeah. And it turns out the reason there's a void gate here is because long ago, over 1,000 years, I think. It's been a long time. Vritra's sister disappeared into the void.
And this is early Allagan times, pre-Crystal Tower days.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he's been trying to find a way to rescue her basically ever since. And this was one of the attempts. And it's a very small void gate. It's not big enough to be much use, but it is stable. And so we decide, hey, yeah, we'll help. We've flown
You've
all
got
over the
literally
universe.
nothing better to do.
We got nothing else going on.
We love bad ideas.
We've been to the 13th before. We've been to the first. We do this kind of thing. So we get Ishtola to come along and take a look at the gate because she's our, ether expert, and ultimately end up enlarging the gate and going through. And
Via bad ideas.
Yes. Also, now we have discovered a way to protect ourselves from the corrupting power of the void by this point. In the past, that would have been a serious problem because the first, the part of the first that we adventured in was prevented from being overrun by light by Minfilia. And then we got there in time to, save everything. But the 13th, it was completely swallowed by darkness. There is no safe area of the 13th.
There's no wall that blocked off the flood.
Yeah. So instead, we're getting some dragon scales and doing our magical alchemical protect us from tempering thing and verifying that is enough by having Y'shtola summon one of her adorable little Nixies and
then it gets sad and corrupted.
giving it and then giving one a dragon scale and sending it through to see if that protects it. Which means Y'shtola has to do her cute little rhyme again. She's very mad about it.
She would very much like us to forget about this rhyme.
She is very threatening. We should never talk about this to anyone. But so ultimately we do figure out, we widen the gate, we determine that we can safely enter, and we head into the void.
The void is terrible. Obviously it's terrible. It's where void spawn come from.
This is where they all live when they're not making trouble in our world.
But their society is far more awful than I thought it might be.
Yeah, it's a little depressing, and somehow they made me feel sad about some of these void sent.
Yeah, that's part of what I was wondering about this was what is there that we can save? Is it just going to be monsters as far as the eye can see? But no, I mean we've seen before that void sent are intelligent and can communicate. And in fact, they're not all as just evil and awful as the ones that we tend to run into. Those are the ones that, actively made deals and came over here to cause trouble. There's some that are just trying to get along in the post-capitalist hellscape that is the 13th, because that's really what it is. They need ether. They can't make their own ether. There's no ether there to eat. They're real hungry if they don't get ether. So mostly they get it by eating each other. And the great part about that is when one void scent eats another void scent, the other void scent still exists. Their thoughts and memories and things become part of the one that ate them, which can build over time and become more and more problematic for that one. And if the one that ate a bunch of other void scent gets killed, well, you can't die. Void scent can't die in the 13th.
I mean, it's Steven Universe fusion, but wrong.
Yeah, basically they discorporate, and then all of those void scent will eventually recorporate as their own individuals again. Void scent only die permanently if they die in the source. This is important. Remember this. So we travel through an awful, twisted palace full of void scent, and at the end find a prison cell containing a void scent that we recognize because we've met them before. It's Xenos's void scent. And at this point, I was very much like, oh God, is Xenos going to be part of this?
Yep.
Please no.
I was so angry.
But really, this is only important because it means this is a void scent that recognizes us. We have met them before. They know who we are. We know, we have this existing connection. And as it turns out, the form that we've seen them in is not their normal form. They were twisted into that by Xenos as part of the whole Reaper thing. In fact, this void scent looks like a rather pale, but otherwise normal person. And I forget at what point we give her a name.
It's a little ways into.
It's after beating up Scarmiglione for the second time.
She doesn't have a name yet at this point, but she ends up being called Zero. And she is very cold and pragmatic, and it's all about deals. She does nothing. She does nothing for nothing. And that's how just void scent in general. Everything is about trades and exchanges. So Y'shtola ends up agreeing to, if Zero helps us to try and rescue Vricha's sister, then Y'shtola will give her ether, because that's ultimately what she wants.
Part of going through this awful, terrible castle thing was meeting up with the person who is currently running it.
Mm-hmm.
And they are ultimately unimportant. I don't remember who it is, but they are killed at the very end of the dungeon by Scarmiglione, one of the 4 fiends from Final Fantasy IV.
Yes, the actual final boss of this dungeon. Because we've already seen it. We've seen at this point, Golbez is apparently the big bad, and he has his 4 fiends. And Scarmiglione is here and does his typical stuff, summoning lots of zombies, coming back from the dead once you think you've defeated him.
He because again, Void Scent cannot die in the 13th.
And Scarlet Miglione is an extremely powerful Void Scent, and so is able to recorporate very quickly. But there is one other thing that can be done to Void Scent in the 13th. And that's something that specifically Zero can do because she is a Memoriate. And that is to seal them away as crystals, which renders them harmless. And also you can like pull information out of them to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a vessel of power that can be drawn upon.
And apparently the whole Memoriates and this whole process of making the crystals and everything is a huge part of how the 13th fell to darkness.
Yep.
There was a big war with Memoriates on one side, and it just all went to crap. And again, I don't remember exactly when we find out, but part of the reason Zero looks like a normal person is because she's not fully Void Scent. She had not yet been born when the wave of darkness occurred. So she's like half Void Scent. She's a Daywalker.
Basically, yeah.
And so, we're dealing with that. We're still trying to figure out what happened to Asjaya, which is Vritra's sister. She's somewhere in the 13th. Our goal is to find her. Trying to track her down. I'm trying to remember the order of things. I think we face Barbarecia next.
Yep.
Yeah, like we get reattacked by Scarmiglione, and crystallization happens. We get to find out a little more via the Echo, and then we go back in through try to see if we can find out more.
Yeah. Oh, and we visit Zero's like home because Void Scent have like areas that are theirs that like they have some level of control over based on how powerful they are.
And basically have a domain.
Yeah. And apparently Zero's is a haven for Void Scent that don't want to be part of this whole garbage life anymore.
Right.
They just want to hide from the other Void Scent and, be safe. And so we visit it, and there are Void Scent there that we can talk to and, try to get information from. Some of them are ones that have worked for the Four Fiends in the past, and so know something about them. Yeah, and then Barbarecia attacks. We have to fight her. And then ultimately we end up going back home, and we take Zero with us. And so Zero gets to experience the source.
And learns that eating can give you ether.
Yeah, and learns that spicy curry is great.
Extremely spicy curry.
So did all of us make it as spicy as possible?
Yes.
Why would I not?
Yeah, like it seemed like there was the option to make it less spicy, but like no.
Why would you do that?
I mean, she made it very clear that she has almost no sense of taste whatsoever. So I was like, well, put as much as we can in there.
Yup. Which hilariously, by the end, becomes a trend.
Yeah.
That everyone wants this dish.
Like it's become the new popular dish in Radzatan is this super spicy curry. But yeah, so Zero learns that you can just like eat an apple to get some ether, and it's so much easier. Oh, and then there's a place in Garlemald that we visit next, which is where the Reapers, where the Reaper arts came from. And apparently there's a Void Gate. We're looking for another Void Gate, basically. And so we think there might be one there because there are like rumors of Void Scent in the area, and it's where the Reapers like originated. And so we go there and fight horrible puppets, and Kanazo, who is just as much of a jerk as he usually is.
Yup.
I was going to say, if you have played FF4 at all recently, do you remember how these things actually fight? A lot of them are real similar.
Yep. He does the whole thing where he like he hides in his shell and creates a tsunami and all that stuff. And in the end, we defeat him. And since we defeated him in the source, he's dead for real.
However, unfortunately, he was the diversion.
Yeah.
The fourth fiend, Rubicante, has also come through and is causing problems for actual Radzatan.
And so he ends up like basically telling us to come meet him on Mount Ordeals for a fight. Because if you remember Rubicante is the one with a sense of honor. Like, he's still going to do what Golbez told him to do, but he's like, he has a code of ethics.
That's probably most accurate, yes.
Well, and to be fair, like during the encounter with Rubicante it's when we find out that they feel like they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, because there's that. So it turns out Golbez's goal is to allow the Void Scent to die. He is tired of the never-ending cycle of pain and suffering and horror, and he plans to open just a massive void gate into the source, allowing all the Void Scent to flood through, and basically, and the end result
Fight
is
to
just
the
everything.
death, essentially.
Yeah, and the end result is everything dies, and it'll be better that way.
I mean, really, we should have just found him and had him send them through one at a time, and we could have killed them.
Yeah, we're good at killing Void Scent. Like if they, we could set something up. Like
Yeah.
Crucifixion? Yes. Light on the left.
And then I think also at this point we've seen some of Zero's past and like her meeting with Golbez and Durante. So Golbez and Durante were the pair of heroes back during the Memorial War that tried and failed to stem the tide of darkness. And Zero met them once back then, and they asked her to like join them, and she refused.
Yeah, because part of the thing is like back then, everyone was super selfish, and everyone basically refused to help each other, and no one trusted anyone else, because every time people grouped up, they would get stabbed in the back, for someone wanting more power.
And what we're seeing here with Zero at this point is her learning to accept aid from others and to trust without expecting it to be like a transaction.
Yeah, so like we basically teach her how we interact with the not scions, and how, we all group together and help each other out, and how that's perfectly normal, and that no one is necessarily beholden to anyone else, but also everyone's helping out. And essentially, she learns how to be a friend.
Turns out friendship is magic.
Yep.
It was, in fact, the friends we met along the way.
Yes. And so what we end up discovering is that thanks to our actions, Golbez's plan is about to come to fruition, because all of a sudden he has the perfect opportunity to make a giant void gate on the moon. Because there's a big hole there where we beat up Hades.
Well, and also that happens to be where he's been holed up this entire time. Like the 13th mirrors what are the cosmology of our world as well. So like there's absolutely a moon, and there's absolutely a gigantic hole in the moon.
Yep, and he's got his base there and his big throne and everything. But so that's where he's going to open the void gate. So first we have to repair the pillars on the moon, and
because it turns out there was this big giant thing set for holding a dark entity right there on the moon that we didn't actually break that. The Asians broke that, but still.
That's true. But then we defeated the dark entity that was kind of like clogging up the space.
Yes, we did.
So we have to turn back on the thing to block the void gate, and manage to do it just in time. But it's not going to hold forever. And in any case, we still need to like rescue Rachra's sister and deal with all of this. So ultimately, we all go to the other moon. And
I think by this point we have seen what has happened to Rachra's sister.
The player sees it well before the player character sees it.
Right.
Yeah.
Which makes it kind of interesting.
Yeah, we see it as a cutscene. Yeah. But so because basically the Archfiends, like their power is Vritra's sister's power. Golbez managed to capture Asjaya and has been doling out her ether to his servants to empower them and like maintain their loyalty. And ultimately he turns her into a void dragon. And so on the moon, we fight Golbez with a void dragon.
This is actually a really annoying fight, quite frankly.
It kind of is. And we do ultimately defeat them, but that doesn't stop Golbez from summoning Zeromus. because I mean, this is the Final Fantasy.
Because you saw where this was going, right? Like that was
yeah.
real obvious.
He's gonna summon Zeromus, and we can't deal with that. Like that is too much for us. We are weakened from fighting Golbez. We have to get out, and so we do. The barrier is still up for now, but we have to find a solution. And well, so it's this giant dark entity in a reflection that is entirely full of darkness. Wouldn't it be great if we had a bunch of extra light that we could just, shove in there? Where could we find a whole bunch of extra light just lying around that, would be useful to put somewhere else? Oh, the first. So it's time to go back to the first, and Zero comes with us.
Somehow.
She's basically like, take me with you. Like you brought your friends back in crystals. You've still got one of the crystals. You put me in the crystal, and we'll figure something out on the other side. And it works. So we go with Reen to where the flood of light was. To basically Ishtola, and I don't remember if Matoya was directly involved.
No, not in this.
No, but
we have to build more pylons.
Yeah, basically we've got a bunch of ether pylons, and if we can set up a line of them, they will channel ether from one place to another. So we're going to basically channel ether from the flood of light to the crystal tower, and then across into the source, and then from the crystal tower and the source to the moon.
Via the Tower of Babel, the Imperial one.
But we also have to ease tensions. One, to first use the gate, and two, that we're going to channel power through the gate, which is going to freak people out.
Yeah, people are not going to be excited to see this happen.
Yeah, that's the first thing they have us do, because they're like, okay, look, this is great, but a whole bunch of light, beaming to the crystal tower, that's going to freak people out. Maybe warn them. So we do a little tour and catch up with all of our friends. And
I'm still pissed about this sequence because
except for one of them.
There's one person we should have gone to first because we know better.
And they're going to be so mad about it.
I know.
Because yes, we catch up with with the leader, with Ishtola's boyfriend, and we catch up with the people in the main human city at various places. We completely forget to say hi to Feol.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
still waiting for them to
Tanya.
come back and bite us.
Yeah.
You can guarantee that's going to go. They haven't forgotten. I bet the writers have not forgotten.
Right. Right. This is going to come back.
But we take Zero around and meet all these people, and she gets to learn something about this world that was flooded with light, and sees what it's like. And then when we get to the flood of light, we're trying to get it to channel into the beam, and we do that, and then Zero's like, what if I take a taste?
What
if I take some of this light and bring it with me? I think I could probably do it. And
a thing I had not noticed until literally that moment. There are no void scent whatsoever in the first.
There are not. It is a bad place for void scent. But so Zero walks up to this, wall of crystallized light and absorbs some of it into her, and it almost is really bad. It does not go well at first, but with Reen's help and all of us, assisting, we managed to pull Zero through.
Yeah, she transmutes the water of life and everything's fine.
And with that all set up, we go back to the first, or we go back to the source, and then we go back to the moon and fly through the void gate to face Zeromus. And it's a big final boss fight, and we defeat Zeromus, but it's not going to. It's one of those situations where we won the fight, but this is a god of void scent, so we defeated it long enough that we can pull Asjaya out of it, but it's still recorporating. And this is when, and I do not know how I didn't make the connection up until this point, because I had thought, to myself a couple of times, I was like, this is the big Final Fantasy IV thing. There are all these story beats. There's no like Cecil's not
where's
involved.
Cecil?
Where's Cecil? Zero is Cecil.
Right, exactly. And like,
And
it's a perfect story arc because go from Dark Knight to Warrior of Light, basically.
And part of what fooled me is she's not a Dark Knight. She's kind of
basically
a
a
Reaper.
Reaper.
I mean,
It's
she uses a
Reaper,
scythe.
but also like that's close enough. It's still an edgelord.
Yeah. But yeah, like Zero basically channels the light, turns into a paladin, and banishes Zeromus forever. Also, sorry, while we were fighting Zeromus, our friends were all keeping Golbez busy. And ultimately, we find out via the Echo, managed to convince Golbez that, yeah, this is a bad idea, and there's a better option. And how about trying to be a hero again with us? We'll all work together.
And I mean, and we also go into like how this was all the side mission with Zero, where we instill basically hope that we are slowly turning back the tide in the first. It might be possible to do that in the 13th.
Yep, and that's part of why she brought the light back with her, is in hopes that maybe the 13th isn't a complete and total loss. It might be possible to repair it. Oh, and also by this point we've discovered, and this was telegraphed quite a bit, that Golbez is not in fact Golbez. Golbez died during the Memorial War. This is actually Durant, who took up Golbez's armor and feels extreme guilt over Golbez's death, the fall of the 13th, and basically his failure at everything. And so what Zero gives him is an opportunity to maybe make up for that and maybe do something about that guilt instead of just ending it all. And so ultimately,
that's kind of where we leave it with with Zero. And like I absolutely expect that at some point we're going to return and see how progress is going on the 13th.
Absolutely have us check in at some point. But yeah, we rescue Asjaya. She's a teeny tiny dragon now, but she is back.
It also took one of Reacher's eyes to get her enough ether to recorporate, basically.
Yeah. So Reacher just has the one eye now, and is basically he puts one eye in his aura body, and the other eye's busy with Asjaya. So while his aura body's running around, his real body's just kind of like laying there, I guess. But yeah, so we, Golbez and Zero, shake hands, or going to work together to try and rebuild the 13th, and we leave them to it and head back home, and the day is saved.
I did actually expect them to string this one out a little more than they did, rather than wrapping it basically all up within one expansion's batch cycles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of expected it to be something like the plague, that led into Shadowbringers, where it wasn't fully dealt with before Shadowbringers started. But yeah, so we are sending light into the 13th, and Zero and Golbez are there to try and do something with it, and hopefully it'll work. And so then we came back and we found out that one of our friends had brought somebody to meet us.
Yep, and Aaronville, our gleaner bud, has a friend that really wants to make our acquaintance, and also very exuberant warrior. I immediately bonded over warriorness.
Because it turns out Aaronville isn't from around here. He just doesn't like to talk about it, but he's actually originally from Tyrol. And so he has brought his old friend, Wuklamat, to come and ask for our help, because there's going to be a big tournament, is what it's made to sound like, to decide who the next ruler of Tyrol will be. And it's very important that one of the other competitors doesn't win. So she needs our help to make sure she wins. And yeah, she is.
They really do make it sound like it's going to be a tournament.
They really do, yeah.
Right.
And yeah, Wuklamat is like a big, cheerful cinnamon roll.
She's a little bit much.
And you get the impression that she's kind of had a little bit of a sheltered life.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
But
you
like
did-
her heart is in the right place. She really wants to do this for the people.
Like she's very cheerful and very friendly, and you do like occasionally see some like glimpses of like she's maybe not quite as experienced at combat as she lets on. She's maybe a little more nervous than she wants to admit about things, but you know, it'll be okay. So we like go off and hunt with her to basically just like all get to know each other. And
Yeah, like it feels like she's testing to see if we're the real deal. That was the impression I got going into that. We're like, yeah, like she's heard all these things about us, but like really wants to see if we're as good as people say we are.
yeah,
As Aaron Bill says we are.
Right. And also, we don't have anything better to do right now,
Right,
so why
exactly.
not?
yeah.
We're
again,
retired.
She
busy.
seems nice.
Like there's some monsters causing trouble on the Isle of Ham. Yeah, we'll all go and fight a giant bird. Why not? It's a really big bird. Muklamot claims that they don't have birds that big on Tyrrell, and that's a lie.
That is a lie.
That is,
Yeah,
that is
very
absolutely
much.
a lie.
Because one of the A ranks is that bird.
I didn't know that part.
But also, again, Muklamot is maybe more sheltered than she initially admits.
Yes, like
Yeah, I mean, like,
this very quickly becomes a theme.
right? She thinks she's very worldly, but not really.
And simultaneously with this, Kryl has been going through old papers at the Students of Baldessian headquarters and has found a letter to her grandfather, Galuf, years ago from the ruler of Tyrol, asking him to come and investigate some city of gold. And also there is a little shamrock earring in with the letter. And so Kryl really wants to go to Tyrol to find out why her grandfather went to Tyrol and what all this is about. So she's in the party.
And she is joining is a new combat class as a Pictomancer. Which,
She
by the
wanted to
way,
be
lots of fun to
useful.
play this class.
It really
Oh,
is.
it's very fun.
Also very seizure inducing.
Eh.
I mean, I don't know.
I don't think it's the worst by a long shot.
I think Summoner's
Takes
worse.
some getting used to.
I mean, Summoner
does.
is much worse, but I think even like Reaper just puts more stuff over enemies than Pictomancer does too.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the Pictomancer that I decided I was going to turn off party effects. I've had them on all this time, and it's like between Pictomancer and the giant summons in every alliance raid.
You know you can control the size of those, right? Separately.
Yeah, I have a macro to make them small.
Mm-hmm.
But the Pictomancer stuff is really cool, but it is very visually distinct compared to pretty much
Yes.
anybody else's stuff. And
That's true.
so it's a little bit more distracting to me
Yeah.
when I'm not actively playing Pictomancer.
Yeah, it does really stand out.
It's
Because it's all-
slightly cell shaded and like a very different look than anything else that's in the game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's extremely cool, but also very distracting.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Well, it's
reminds
made
me
of
of
paint.
Epic Mickey.
It really does.
I mean, I like the idea of just painting a lightning bolt and having it happen. That's one of my favorite spell effects in the entire game now.
That is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But so Kryl's coming with us, and Aaronville's coming with us, obviously, because like he knows his way around there. So he'll be our guide to a degree while we're in Tyrol. And then we end up recruiting Alphino and Alice. They decide that they want to come because like they're still helping Garlemald rebuild, but like they kind of want to see like how Tyrol was brought together and what things are like in Tyrol, and in hopes that basically learning more about the founding of Tyrol will aid with the rebuilding of Garlemald.
Well, and they're also hoping to find trade partners for
Mhm.
Garlemald, so that they, that the Garlemald people are very proud people, and they can sense that they need to stand on their own 2 feet.
Yeah.
That was
And
also a thing that went on during the post Endwalker patches.
Yeah. And trade with Tyrol would be that's an opportunity for trade with someone that wasn't involved with, the decades of, war between the Empire and basically everybody. Because Tyrol wasn't involved in all of that. So
They're across the ocean. Like, they just were not involved at all.
Yeah, and Tyrrell doesn't have ships that sail the ocean. They don't really go across the sea. Like Wuklamot coming across is very out of the ordinary. But so ultimately, we all agree to go. And then also in like the final cutscene of pre-Dawntrail, we see Astinian is basically like, oh, I've been north, I've been east, let's go west. So presumably we'll run into him at some point. Hint, hint. And then we also see Thancred and Urianger receive a letter from one of the other candidates for the throne, who is seeking their aid.
We don't get to find out who that is yet.
Nope.
It's actually there's a long while in the story before you get to find out who that is.
It is, yeah.
But by that point, they already know who we're helping. Mm-hmm. So that becomes a point of question as to whether or not, they'll be able to stand against us. And they both decide they're up to the challenge.
Yeah, like it's definitely part of the impression I got there was Thancred and Urianger was like, hey, this is going to be an opportunity to like test ourselves against our friends. That should be fun. And yet,
coming from people who have both been traitors in the past, like
it's true.
It's maybe not a good look, but
I mean, I
my first thought when they were mentioning that, I was like, I have fought you before. Like that's come up.
Yes.
I mean, admittedly, Thancred wasn't himself at the time, but yeah.
Both of them.
Wasn't his
yes. Estedian was, or not Urianger was. That was his choice.
Yeah, but I did kind of get the impression that was like deliberately kind of why they had those two in particular.
We're already mad at them?
Yeah.
I would be perfectly happy to have an opportunity to beat up Urianger again.
But yeah, so
any opportunity.
So at this point, all we really know is that there's some sort of competition. Wuklamot is one of the competitors. There's at least one other competitor that Wuklamot at least believes it's very important that they not win. And we don't really know beyond that.
Yeah, and the entire time we're hoping that like they're not backing the one that shouldn't win.
Because at this point, we have not met any of the other competitors.
Mm-hmm.
Although it takes very little time before arriving to Tyrrell that we finally find out who all of the other options are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we get to Tyrrell and make it to Tuliolal, which is the capital, and get to meet Galul Jaja, the Dawn servant of Tyrrell, who is a two-headed Mamulja, whose basically his might head is the one dealing with everything because his magic head is very sleepy and spends most of his time asleep these days. Yep.
Nothing to see here.
And in fact, when we first meet Galul Jaja, he's in the middle of a fight with Astinian.
So, like, no time spent wondering where Astinian got up to. This is where he got up to.
Yep. Because apparently Galul Jaja has a habit of anytime someone particularly strong, like, shows up, he challenges them to a duel, just, like, for fun, to test himself. And Astinian gives him a good fight.
That we interrupt, unfortunately.
Or Astinian does, hint that maybe that's not the fight he was looking for. If we're, showing up, maybe there's a better option.
It's like, well, that's the guy that saved the universe. And so we learn more about, the founding of Tyrrell and this competition. And it basically, 80 years ago, Galul Jaja traveled throughout throughout Tyrrell and met the various, peoples and basically managed to convince them all to come together and form a nation, and has held that nation together for 80 years. And now he has decided it is time for him to step down and a new Dawn servant to take his place. And there are 4 challengers, 3 of whom are Galul Jaja's children. It's worth I don't think we ever mentioned that Wuklamot is a Hrothgar, or the Tyrrell version of Hrothgar. They have their own names for all of them. She is the adopted child of Galul Jaja. And in fact, Galul Jaja he has one actual biological child.
And even that is considered to be a miracle, because two-headed Mamulja are not expected to have children.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So the eldest is Zerulja, who is his biological child. His second child is Koana, who is a Mikote. And then there's Wuklamat. And then there's one more competitor, who is a two-headed Mamulja and just a giant asshole.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But like even in these early meetings, you can kind of see that there are two candidates that should never hold the throne and two candidates that might be okay. Like and you're backing one of the decent options, but like also Koana doesn't seem that bad either, just like has a very different set of priorities, but also very much seems to care about, the nation and keeping, doing right by the people. And Zeralja just wants to conquer everyone because it's inevitable that conflict will happen. So we might as well do it ahead of time.
Yeah.
Like,
All of these
Stopping
candidates are
him is why
flawed.
Wuklamat went for us.
Yes. All these candidates are flawed, though. Even the good ones. Even
Yeah.
Wuklamat. But yeah, definitely there are two good ones and two not good ones.
Yeah, because Zerulja basically has decided that the only way that there can be peace is for him to conquer the entire world. And then there will be peace after everybody's so tired of war that they just won't do it anymore. And Bakul
That
Jaja,
has worked every time so far.
yeah, clearly. Bakul Jaja is just a giant asshole who seems to just believe that since he's a two-headed Mamulja, he should be in charge because that's how these things work. Koana, we learned pretty early on, Koana studied in Charlian and has brought a lot of technology back to his home. And he is very focused on progress, and specifically progress through technology.
Yeah, modernization.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so that, might give you a clue as to who Thancred and Urianger got recruited by, because, one of these guys has actually been to Charlian and was a student there for a number of years. And then Wuklamat is just very focused on, I want my people to be happy, I want them to be at peace, but is maybe a bit naive.
Doesn't really know how to accomplish that, but really wants it.
Yeah.
Not
Wuklamat is extremely naive.
Yeah, she is the classic cheerful, naive princess who is maybe a bit clumsy.
Except, also carries around a giant axe and knows how to use it.
But maybe not as well as she lets on.
Not at first, anyway.
And also is very prone to seasickness.
And sickness.
Which, if you think about it, tells you how serious she is about this, that she was willing to come across the ocean to Charlian to recruit us.
She also has some issues with alpacas.
I mean, they spit.
She has a lot of issues with not ever leaving the capital city.
That's
really what
that's
it boils down to.
She has been very sheltered and, has basically lived in the capital city her entire life, has little to no experience outside of the city.
But she's also super curious and she wants to learn about people and not just spreading all her ideas. She wants to know what other people think, how their culture works, and she wants to basically try to make everyone be able to fit in and work together as much as possible.
Yeah. Like one of the big themes of Dawntrail is tradition, both positive and negative. And so the first thing we got to do is we got to figure out what the competition even is, because Galul Jaja just gives the competitors some tablets and says, "Okay, go
find the Golden City."
Yep. Yeah, the goal is to collect 7 keystones, one for each tablet, and then find the Golden City. And if you have all the tablets with the keystones, you'll be able to do something, and that will be proof that you are worthy to be the new ruler.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, in the 80 years ago time, the Dawn Servant went around the countryside meeting all the people, essentially gathering a band of heroes to face off against Valigramanda, which is this giant not Quetzalcoatl serpent snake thing, and that was attacking the countryside and was basically trying to save the day. But it took an entire party of people that come from all these different areas of the land, and Wicklamat gets the bright idea that, like, we have these giant tablets telling the story of how Tulialal was brought underneath one rule. Maybe we need to, like, retrace the steps.
If you played Final Fantasy III and not Final Fantasy VI, this is Tritalk.
Yep.
It's Belghast. So Esper locked in ice at the very start of the game.
And interestingly, and Valgramanda is a Tural Vidral, which appears to basically be the Turalian equivalent of the great beasts from the east. Like when creatures live long enough, they gain power and ultimately become, mighty foes. Because, we can't have primals anymore. Like, we dealt with those. So there's got to be some other excuse for, a giant thing that wants to, breathe fire and ice and lightning at us.
We're not going to run out of those. Like, we're not going to run out of reasons to have those.
It's true. But yeah, apparently this, it's just a thing that naturally happens every so often when a thing lives long enough. But yeah, so we basically decide that the tablets seem to match up with the records of Galul Jaja's travels. And so maybe the idea is to, retrace those steps. And so we give that a try. And as per usual in the last few expansions, you have a choice of 2 zones initially. You do one and then you do the other in whatever order you want.
I went and helped the burbs first.
I also helped the burbs first.
That's the correct choice.
because there are bird guys here that are like the Vanu Vanu but more colorful.
Yes, and I was hoping they would teach me a dance.
Well, it's not too late. Maybe they will eventually. Although I suspect they will not be one of the societies.
Right. Yeah.
We already had the Vanu Vanu. But yeah, so we go to help the burbs, and there was a storm, a massive storm while we were on our way over. Like, we went through really rough seas, nearly capsized, and that storm did a lot of damage in Tural too. So there are stairways that are destroyed, and that's why we can't get up to the other half of this zone right now. And a lot of the bird people's village was, knocked down, lots of damage. And then on top of that, their reeds aren't growing well. And apparently these birds are like pandas, they only eat reeds. So this is a problem. And it turns out we did choose correctly. One of the people that we get a keystone from is here. And basically it turns out that each of these people, they get to pick a trial for the competitors. And for the birds, it's to help them get their reeds growing again. And so we're there, Kawana is there, and Bakul Jaja is there. And Bakul Jaja is basically like, why would I want to do that? That's stupid. And Kawana looks at the field and then walks off, saying I need equipment. And so
he wanders off for a while. And we have Alphino inspects some of the stuff around, come to some conclusions about the Harvest Festival that they have put off.
Basically,
to deal with the damage.
It seems the ether is very stagnant, and that's the problem.
And that's the one memory that Wicklamat has, is of attending this festival when she was a kid and loving this festival, and was real sad when the festival was being postponed.
So and the festival's being postponed because of the damage, and the festival float is damaged. And so basically we have, we all discuss stuff, and Wicklamat has the idea of could, maybe the festival might help. It'll cheer everybody up. It'll, get people pumped. I mean, she's the one in charge. It's her idea. We'll go with it. And that's one of the things I liked about the way they had all this go, is that in those places, it was Wicklamat deciding what to do, because she's in charge, really. We're here to help her. We're here to mentor her. But she's the one who needs to make that decision. And so we go and meet a really weird Hrothgar, who's apparently really popular in Japan. I'm curious, about his voice acting in Japan. Maybe if that has something to do with it.
There's a thing that throughout the whole first chunk of this expansion, There's just a lot of really silliness.
There really is.
Yeah.
Just like Wuklamad and her seasickness, like this guy, just there's a lot of way more over the top silliness than we're used to in the main story.
Yeah, like
Usually
anytime
we're fighting for like the survival of our planet or something.
Right.
And we're not currently doing any of that.
Anytime Wuklamot gets like seasick, it does the watery eye kitten thing from that meme.
Yes. But yeah, the stakes are a lot lower, so they felt like they could like have more lightheartedness stuff. And it takes a little getting used to. And but basically this guy, he's very serious about courtesy and about manners, which leads to him like just freaking out anytime that he feels like he's messed up talking to Wuklamot, and then Wuklamot just being like, stop it, don't worry about it. I told you not to, don't worry about it.
I think it's like, okay.
Like, okay, I won't worry about it.
Yeah, I'll never worry about it again, yes. And then the very next scene.
Like, it is very much a running gag. But so he's like studied the float, and it turns out talking to him, he's like, yeah, the float is in fact basically a channels ether, because that's part of what led Wuklamot to like decide that maybe fixing the float and getting the festival going would be good, because in looking into like what the float's made of and everything, like the stuff used to make it is the same sort of things that are like prized by Charlian as ethereal conductors. It's like the gemstones used for the eyes of the float and the wood, and feathers taken from the Hanu that could like manipulate the wind best. And so this guy's like, yeah, no, that's 100% right. And if we can get this thing fixed and have the festival, like you'll see like what the results are. And yeah, it should be impressive.
And part of it too is the person that was supposed to be in charge of the festival, I think, died in the storm.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
now we're basically dealing with someone who has no clue what they're doing as well.
Like he's depressed. Like basically all of them are, kind of shell shocked from the storm still. He's sad because his friend died. He's like not really entirely clear on what he should be doing, and doesn't think the festival like is important with everything else going on right now. Like we have other things we should be focusing on, don't we?
Yeah, but like as we explore the zone, it's everything. It's not just the people and not just the crops, but like the frogs are lethargic, like something isn't right with the entire area. And clearly parading a boat around is going to fix it.
Yeah. And so we fix the float, and Wuklamot rides in the float, and
well, to back up, we spent a bunch of time fixing the float, and who should come on to try to break the float before we can use it, but
yes.
Bakul Jaja.
Yes, because he's a giant asshole.
Because he's a jerk. And also because he initially was like, screw this, I'm just going to beat up the quest giver and take the thing, and found out that that was a fast way to get disqualified. So instead, he's just going to try to mess with us.
He's just going to try to cheat however possible. And he overheard us talking about the float and is like, okay, well, I'll take it away from them.
We'll just take the float.
Yeah.
That'll work, right? But Wuklamot tries to fight him solo and fails badly. But then we show up and he's like, maybe not.
So we end up chasing him off. But so at this point, Wuklamot, is no match for him. Like he doesn't even break a sweat, stopping her. But so we run him off, parade Wuklamot around in the float, and sure enough, it like it causes the ether to be channeled into the fields, and some of the crops liven up, and that is sufficient for us to win, or to get a keystone. And then just after this, Koana shows up with like a vial of something alchemical, and that also resurrects some of the crops, and so he also gets a keystone. But so that kind of gives you that gives you an early impression of both Wuklamot and Koana. Like Wuklamot focused on the traditional, methods, and Koana focused on technology brought from Charlan.
And when Wuklamot focused on learning about the people and then going from there, and Koana, focused on some kind of technology.
Yeah, he just looked at the field, said, okay, there's an ethereal problem. I will leave and come back with a fix. And then the other zone. Oh, and yes, and also Bakul Jaja stole a vial of the stuff from Koana and is also able to get a keystone.
Had one of his minions steal it. He didn't even bother to steal it himself.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's got some one-head Mamulja, like, trailing around, helping him out. And so then the other zone of the first two is the one that we have referred to a lot as Not Peru.
Yes.
I'll say I love this place.
It is great. It is very mountainous. It is full of alpaca. And the people who live there are, like, bigger than Lalafell, but, like, human child-sized, and they all dress like ducks.
So I will say that the name of the quest giver drove me freaking crazy here, because these guys are all based on an NPC in Final Fantasy XII named Tobli, all of them. So having to find one specifically called that was really annoying.
But you're all Tobli.
Oh, from Final Fantasy X2, that's right. I'd forgotten that the Pelu Pelu were from that. Wow.
I think he's actually from 10.
Yeah, he's from 10 too.
No, I think he's from the original 10. Although, yes, definitely shows up in 10 too.
But yeah, and also dresses like a duck. So there you go. Yeah, so the Pelu Pelu are a group of merchants who travel about in their ponchos on their alpacas and buy and sell all sorts of things, but particularly beverages. They're particularly into mezcal and
Matcha.
Matcha, yeah. And so we show up there, and yeah, first we have to even find the person that we're supposed to talk to, and they make that part of the challenge to properly identify him. But once we've done that, the challenge here is to catch an alpaca. And Wuklamot has a problem with alpacas. And in this zone, Zarulja also shows up with his Grand Vizier jackass sidekick, and basically immediately heads off to go catch an alpaca without any additional help or anything. He's just like, fine, I'll go get one. Whereas we go through a whole trade it, the whole starting with a paperclip, trade your way up to a thing to get.
I love this sequence so much.
To get an alpaca bridle.
It's a great trade.
Yep. It's better than trying to sell fish.
And this again is one of those situations where having stopped and talked to a person and made friends with someone pays dividends, because one of along the steps, there was on the way here, there was a cloth merchant whom we interacted with, and he was friendly with us, who supports Wuklamot. And he's one of the ones that we end up going to make a trade with. And so we've got to trade some yarn for some wool for a poncho, which we then trade for, I think, an axe that we then, trade for some matcha, and so on and so forth, to ultimately get some vintage mezcal to trade to a guy that doesn't really want to help us because he supports Zarulja, but a deal's a deal, and he gives us an alpaca bridle.
Yeah, because that's the overarching theme with all of these Pelu Pelu folks is they're shrewd negotiators, but they're also deeply bound to a sense of fairness.
It is very important to them that a trade makes both parties happy.
Right, they're bringing joy to the world by trading. So you want to trade something someone actually wants to bring joy.
So then Wuklamot gets to go off on her own, because she can't have help, into the wild alpaca fields to try and catch an alpaca. And we sit and wait for quite a long time and start to get really worried. But she does ultimately succeed and overcomes her fear of alpacas. Decides maybe they actually are kind of fluffy and cute. But also part of this is where you start to really see that Wuklamot has something of an inferiority complex, and in particular feels inferior to Zeruljah. Because Zeruljah heads out and then comes back before we even started with not just an alpaca, but a golden alpaca, which is like a thing of legend. And no, she doesn't have to get a golden alpaca. She just has to get an alpaca. But still, like, how can she compete with that? Like, what is she even doing here? But she pushes through and she succeeds. And I think it's after that she decides that, like, okay, it's time to, like, be completely honest with all of you and put all the cards on the table and maybe, like, let you in on my insecurities.
But like the reveal is so hilarious. It's like she's telling us this secret that we can plainly see.
That we haven't already figured out.
And we're all like, we already know you get seasick.
Yeah, like
look, she's trying her best. I do believe after wrapping up both of those, we get called back to the palace for a thing.
Yes. Yeah, that's when we go back and Galul Jaja wants to talk to us.
Talk with the largest air quotes I can possibly give over voice.
Well, I mean, we do eventually talk, but before we talk, he wants that duel. And so we get to have a solo encounter with Galul Jaja, which basically ends up as one of those, like, it was a good fight and we could just barely like keep up with him in his weakened state. So imagine what he must have been like at the height of his power.
Cough, cough.
And then we have a nice, like, chat with him as a concerned father about, like, basically, like, the truth behind the competition and the fact that, like, if at the end of the thing, if he doesn't think any of the four are truly, like, up to being Dawn Servant, then he won't name a new Dawn Servant, and he'll keep the throne and we'll try again down the road. But, like, he wants to know what we think of Wuklamot and asks us to take care of her. Watch out for his daughter.
Along with the message that, he doesn't think any of the four of them are at all ready to become Dawn Servant.
Yeah.
At the present time.
It's like, hopefully by the end of this, one of them will have risen to the challenge. But as of right now, no.
And I know we talked about this in, like, the non-spoilery Dawntrail discussion, but, like, it's really driving home that we're the mentor here. We're the teacher. We're not the person actually doing the things. And just the interaction that we have with the Dawn Servant is just underlining that, like, he gets it. He understands the role that we are doing. He's thankful we're doing the role, but also, like, this is not our tale.
We're not Luke. We're Obi-Wan.
Nope.
Try to stay alive a little longer than that, though.
Yes. And one of the things that, and I really appreciate about how they handled that in this, because it's so easy to have a story where someone else is the main character and it be bad. Case in point, Traherne. we all hate Traherne.
Yes.
But the reason we hate Traherne is because he shows up as this, like, noble, like, perfect person that is above us and can do no wrong, and we're here to aid him in his noble journey. And, like, that's not what this is. This is, we are the old hand who has lots of experience, and here is this kid who is in a little over her head, but is a good kid and just needs some help. And here we are to help her.
I mean, and I would say that we see a little of ourselves in her, but also we're a primal, so I don't know that counts.
As a slight side note, this comes up a bit during the 13th stuff, but I am amused that they have started justifying our showing up to trial fights with 7 other people.
Yes.
Yes.
We just have the magic stone now.
Yep.
Like, Azim left us this thing, and we can use it when we need it. And Maybe someday it'll wear out, but
And yet,
yep, handy that.
but yeah, Wuklamat is actually an interesting character with character development and does not just start off as the chosen one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she has insecurities about not being the chosen one specifically. It makes her very different than the usual type of character who is in this role.
Well, and honestly, like there's been a lot of, I don't want to say controversy, but there's been a lot of folks that have disliked aspects of the story and how Wuklamat starts out like not really having a clue what she's doing and then, evolves from there. And that, folks have said that it feels like it's a really fast transition, but also like, I think on some hand, like I think the storyline for Dawntrail was written for a non-min-max audience.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had done that, you would have spent time in all of these zones, seeing the sites, doing the side quests,
Mm-hmm.
and it would feel like there's a longer journey. But like the Western mindset has been to speed run expansions for every MMO.
Yeah.
So if you're only doing the MSQ, yeah, it feels a little bit quick at times. That like we're rapidly evolving the character of Wuklamat.
Yeah. But also, I mean, Wuklamat's main weakness is that she hasn't experienced the larger world. And that's what we're doing.
Yep.
Like she gets a crash course in the cultures of Tural. And so after this point, it's time for the first dungeon. Because next up we're going to go visit the Moblins, who are like goblins, but they build giant pots and keep artisans in them, but not in a creepy way.
I mean,
They keep them
Kind-
extremely
kind-
happy in their little pots.
kind of in a creepy way. Like, let's be honest, it is kind of creepy.
Well, and what we learn
I mean,
is that
they used to just kidnap people.
yeah,
But now they're extremely well-meaning.
but yeah, Galul Jaja came along and was like, "Look, you could just
Stop this.
stop kidnapping people, and you could make contracts with people, and like you take care of them, and they make stuff, and it's a win-win for everybody." And so that's what they do now. So the Moblins pride themselves on anticipating their Potsworn's needs and giving them everything that they need and keeping them happy. And then the Potsworn create beautiful work, artisan works. And problem the Moblins have right now is that when the storm blew through, it broke a bunch of the pots and wrecked things up a bunch. And so they're having trouble like keeping the Potsworn happy and, basically just keeping up their side of the bargain. So some of their folks are starting to leave. But before we meet them, it's time for the first dungeon, which is going along the river to make it to the Moblins, because the stairs up to that part of the zone are still busted. But we can sail along the river in a boat hauled by a giant freshwater manatee, and it'll all be great. Except it's not, because Buckle Jaja breaks our boat.
Surprise.
So we end up like trekking through the jungles and
To
running.
be completely fair, Kawana decided to take the overland route, and Kawana's companions decide to make our journey a little bit more difficult as well.
That too. We come across them, and they're like, "Oh, looks like you're gonna have to take the long way around. Cave in." Because Thancred and Urianger are indeed Kawana's assistants, and yeah, they're
They enjoyed that way too much.
they did.
Yeah.
Well, let's be honest. They knew it wasn't going to keep us very long. They just wanted to get there first. But so we make our way through there, fight a giant, horrible bug.
Fight a flying freshwater manatee.
Yes. Well, all swimming creatures fly in Final Fantasy XIV. It's just how things are. We have an explanation for that now. And we make it to the Moblins. And Moblins mostly just want our help, like with the Potsworn, as I recall.
Yeah, so their
task is to recruit a new Potsworn.
That's right. We
But
have to come back
before
with a new Potsworn.
that, their town also got wrecked by the storm, and they need some help cleaning stuff up and making sure the potsworn that they have don't leave. So we do a little bit of that first, and then the actual trial is to go and recruit a new potsworn.
And so here again, we've got us and Koana and Vukuljaja are all here. Is Zerulja here?
Yeah, Zerulja's also
He
here.
is.
I think
All
so,
four of
yeah.
us are here for this one. And so, yeah, we go off and we find someone. And again, there's a friend that we made previously who we think it's like, oh, they might be interested. It's someone who was on the boat with us coming over from Charlian, who was an artisan who was looking for like a new start. And so we go recruit them. And there's like, some work to do with that. And, Koana and Zerulja each go off to find people. And Vukuljaja decides he's just going to take a potsworn from one of the three of us. Because
he attempts to take it from Zerulja. That is who he went for.
Yeah. It goes badly for Vukuljaja.
Well, because his thought is like, Zerulja is not double-headed. It can't be any good at all.
He's just a little one-headed Mamulja. He can't be as powerful as me, and Zerulja just gut punches him. It's not even a fight.
Like, the only reason that he's still alive is because Zerulja's lackey is like, don't kill me, it might be useful.
Yeah. And I think because basically his thinking there is like, okay, he's not going to mess with us anymore, but he's still going to mess with the other two. And that's perfect. Right. And this is also, I think, where we start to see some hints that maybe there's a little more to Vukuljaja than it seems. Like that there's
a desperation.
Yes.
That we're starting to see.
Yeah.
Like there's more to it than just he thinks he should be in charge. Like it seems very much like he has to do this or
something. We don't know.
Like he cannot fail.
He very much feels like he has to be in charge, but also he doesn't really know what to do with it.
That too. He has no plan for once he's taken the throne. He will be on the throne. That's his plan.
Vukuljaja is very much like the stereotypical jock in an 80s film picking on
the bully.
Us that are the nerds.
Absolutely. Yeah. He is bigger than us and thinks that means he gets to do what he wants. And as we have seen at this point, his plan always seems to come back around to beat up one of the other three and take the thing from them, which is in fact what he ends up doing. He manages to trick Wuklamat into like so that he can catch her alone, beats her up and takes her keystones. And so at this point, we've lost a couple of the keystones, and so at some point we're going to have to face him and get them back. But that can wait until we've gotten the other ones.
First, we had to swoop in both our team and Koana's team to get Wuklamat back.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so there, at least you see that Koana was willing to stop what he was doing, stop pursuing the trials, and rescue his sister.
Yeah, he cares more about the sister than winning.
Yeah. This is where we see that Koana cares about Wuklamat, like that she is important to him. So he managed to rescue her, and are kind of sad because things went badly. But got to carry on. So next up is the Giants, who I gather are all named after giants from Final Fantasy XI.
I
don't know. I did not play enough about Final Fantasy XI to tell you.
Their eyeballs still creep me out.
Yes, the giant wet eyeballs.
They do have giant frog eyes. And it turns out, so most of them are not as giant as they used to be. They used to be really, really giant, but there was a plague, basically, that weakened them, and the vast majority born since then are still bigger than a Rogadin, but not by a whole lot.
I mean, they kind of look like they may be related to the giants from ARR, the
Gigas.
Gigas, yeah.
They do have a kind of a similar like stature, yeah.
Yeah.
So we go meet them, and the giants guard Valagarmanda because Valagarmanda was not killed when Galul Jaja defeated Valgarmanda. That was beyond even him. What he managed to do was get Valgarmanda to basically overload and freeze itself in a giant block of ice. And the
It
giants
really does look exactly like it does in the start of F6.
It does, yeah. And the giants have been guarding that block of ice ever since. And it is slowly weakening. Like the implication is at some point Valgarmanda will break out, but not for a while yet. It'll be fine. And so at this point we've kind of like developed a pattern, and we're just going to stick with that pattern because Wukulmat is very serious about learning about the culture of each of these people that we meet. So she wants to learn more about the giants, and decides the way to do that is to, she wants to learn more about the giants, and then also, again, we need to find the person that's willing to even give us a keystone. And so they direct us to their graveyard, which is full of tombstones, both for people dead and still alive, because they have a belief that basically that remembering people, keeps them alive, basically. And so we learn more about, Galul Jaja's fight with Valgarmanda, and the group that he brought with him for that, and are ultimately sent to a just incredibly huge mountain. We have to go to the top of the mountain, and
because of course we do.
And that's where the High Luminary is, waiting for us. So we must scale Warcore Zormor, where we fight, among other things, an adorable like snow spriggan thing.
Yes, it feels so bad to beat that thing up.
It's very
Does
cute.
it though? Like it spends half the fight freezing its allies.
Well, and if you do the crafting quests, specifically the Weaver leatherworking carpentry ones, those quests are about binding books of stories about the various peoples of Tyrol. And one of them is the story about how the Pelu came to start growing matcha. And apparently it was one of those that first gave matcha to the Pelu. So then I felt extra bad about beating him up. But yeah, so we're racing Zorulja up to the top of the mountain in this case, and get up there and fight the guy, and then Valgarmanda breaks loose. Because while we were all busy up here, Bakul Jaja decided that he was just gonna like wreak some havoc, and made use of his super two-head magic style to cast like ultimate dual fire and melt the ice. Like they make it very clear that like this is a thing that only a two-headed Mamulja could do. So Valgarmanda's loose, and now what are we going to do? And at this point, we've got our keystone. Like we did the thing that we were here to do. We could just leave.
But no, we are who we are.
Zorulja just leaves because he's also a jackass.
Does he really not participate in this fight?
He shows up at the very end.
He has his own fight, and we stand to the side like while it happens.
Yeah.
So we've all gotten our keystones, but Valgarmanda's loose, so somebody's got to do something about it. Guess it's going to be us.
So with the help of Erenville, we track down where this giant bird went. Giant elemental bird monster thing.
And it turns out it's like a holy ground. And the group of the giants that don't like Tyrol and basically want to ultimately like rebel and restore the giant empire says, no, you can't go in there. Get out of here. But
so yet again, we have to win someone else's approval.
This one doesn't take very long, though, honestly.
We actually ran into them before going up Warcore Zormor, and Wuklamat saved one of them from a horrible bird thing. And that ends up paying off. Like, they owe us a life debt, and we're able to parlay that into...
Let us go in there and beat up this thing.
Once we convince them that we're capable of beating up the thing, we get their permission to go in and do it. And Koana and Urianger and Thancred help out on that one.
I think Zorulja does help with the actual fight.
Maybe he does.
He shows up right before we go into the fight.
Yeah, he does end up showing back up. Yeah. But so if you take an NPC group in, like that's who your group of 8 is. is you and your folks minus Aaronville, because Aaronville is not a combatant. And then Koana and his 3 and Zerulja. And after defeating them, Wuklamot is like really psyched, like we managed to do what even her dad couldn't. The others are like, yeah, but Valgrimander was weak. Like we couldn't have done that if it had managed to like get up to full power.
Stop being such a downer.
Oh, for sure.
But still, just let her have this.
After resolving that, there leaves what? I believe 2 keystones to go?
Because at that point we've gotten the Hanu Hanu, the Pelu Pelu, the Moblins, the Yoktel, whatever. And
now we have to go have a cookout.
yeah. Next up is the Brax, the Hrothgar. And yes, the Hrothgar competition is Iron Chef. We have to properly prepare a traditional dish, and they're not going to tell us anything about. They tell us the name of the dish, and that's all. We've got to figure out what it even is, how to make it, and then properly prepare it and eat it. And also, there are only 2 keystones, so only 2 of the 4 will get keystones. And also, we are in teams of 2. So one team will win, that team gets keystones. And it's pulled at random. So, like, they're doing this random pull, and I was sitting there like, oh god, are they going to match me with Bukul Jaja?
That was what I was expecting, honestly.
That's what I was expecting.
Yeah, same.
But thankfully, they matched us up with Koana. And Zerulja is stuck with Bukul Jaja. And Bukul Jaja, again, is like, what is even the point of this? But he, like, at least goes along with it because, Zerulja could beat him up if he wanted.
As beat him up previously.
So we go off to find out, what is this food even? And learn about, like, the spices involved and the meat and the banana leaves to wrap it and so forth. And then have to collect the ingredients and discover, so the banana leaves come from a portion of the forest that we can't get to. Like, we can't, so how can we even get those? And basically are kind of given the hint to, like, go to this particular, like, deserted ruin of a village and look around a bit and learn more about what's going on in Yoktel. And what we learn is that before Galul Jalja came, there was just ongoing war between the Hrothgar and the Mamulja. They were in constant combat, like fighting over the forest, the resources, and Galul Jalja managed to basically defeated everybody, stopped the fight, and made them all make friends. And to kind of seal the deal, had them cook and eat a feast together. And so this dish that we're making is the food that was made for that feast. It is a combination of the ingredients and cooking methods of 2 cultures brought together. And that's what makes it, like, important and why it was the thing that they chose for this. And so we take the stuff back, and Wuklamot and Kryl cook the food and do it properly, and it's delicious. And they are the leader of the Hrothgar is pleased, and then Zerulja and Bukul Jaja show up, like, and demand their opportunity, and so they cook their food, but they didn't have the banana leaves, so it's not quite right. So it's
and their method wasn't correct either, and yeah, there were multiple issues with their dish.
It's like they didn't learn the history of the dish and the meaning of it, basically, and so they failed. And Bukul Jaja in particular is real mad about this. And so Koana and Wuklamot get their keystones, and then the leader of the Hrothgar wants to talk to us alone and reveals to us that Wuklamot is his daughter. When she was very, very young, someone tried to kill her, which I wonder if maybe is a hanging plot thread that is, going to come up at some point.
Yeah, I've got my suspicions as to who it was.
Mm-hmm.
But someone someone like shoved her into a cenote, I think, and she nearly died. And so to protect her, he took her to Galul Jaja and asked him to take her in. And so this was, when she was young enough that she doesn't remember him or anything of living there. And also, I hadn't thought about this until I saw somebody else bring this up, is a bit of an explanation for why she's so sheltered, if Galul Jaja was, particularly protective of her for this reason.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so he tells us this and also makes us promise not to tell her. But sadly, the Grand Vizier dude was eavesdropping and heard this. Or no, not the Grand Vizier dude. It's one of Bakul Jajag's guys.
Yeah, one of his
Right.
minions.
Here's this. And so Bakul Jaja ends up kidnapping the Hrothgar leader and basically threatening to kill him to try to get Wuklamot to give him the rest of her keystones, which leads to the big one-on-one fight between Wuklamot and Bakul Jaja, where you control Wuklamot. And this is pretty much like the apotheosis of Wuklamot's like learning to believe in herself and her desire to protect others and standing for Tyrol. And I thought it was great.
Okay, so here's my problem with all these kinds of fights. Like, I have always hated taking control of somebody else, and so that's never going to make me happy. But what always annoys me is that I can't reorder the keybinds.
Yeah.
So I'm stuck on a control scheme that I never play. Like, it's a warrior. Like, she's basically a warrior. And like, I'm having to play this weird contorted version of a warrior.
Yeah.
It mostly just annoyed me. But like, I thought the fight was great. I just, didn't like actually doing it.
It may have been less of a problem for me because like I play a bard, so what she does is nothing like what I do. So it would have been weird no matter what. But yeah, so you have this one-on-one fight with Bakul Jaja, and when he realizes he's losing, he like has his minions all start attacking, and so you're just taking down swaths of massive groups of other Mamulja, and ultimately defeat him and take the keystones back. At which point, Bakul Jaja just like absolutely just cracks. Like he has a mental break and runs screaming into the forest. And then the rest of his guys are like, well, I guess that was a waste. Whatever. No point now. I guess if the next thing is at our village, go. Like you actually like I don't remember who asks them is like, should you be telling us this? And they're basically like, yeah, what's the point? He lost. He's a failure. And so it's time to go to the Mamulja village to try and get the last keystone. And it turns out this is going to be a problem because nobody wants to talk to us. And even when we find the Elector, he like very clearly hates us all and is adamant that no, we're not going to win. Like, and his challenge is to face a recreation of Galul Jaja in his prime. And so we're like, well, we're going to learn more about your people, and then we'll come back and we'll deal with this.
We do remember Suzerain trying it and failing it.
And yes.
Mm-hmm.
And becoming disqualified.
Worse than failing it, and then attempting to attack the Elector and becoming disqualified.
So he is out. And we also the Elector learns that Bakul Jaja, that we defeated Bakul Jaja, and he is very mad about this. His wife mostly just looks real sad. And as we're leaving, she wants to talk to us and asks us to basically meet her where she can talk with us more privately. And so this leads to basically this leads to us finding out what Bakul Jaja's deal is, what the Mamulja's deal is in general, and ultimately what it comes down to is that two heads aren't as rare as we thought. Two heads that survive are what is rare. There are just masses and masses of tiny dead two-headed babies buried in a cenote, and they have been just doing this horrible thing, like all of these deaths, to try and create a two-headed Mamulja to lead them back to greatness. And that was Bakuljaja, and now he has failed. And so, and this is the point where we're confronted with, up to this point, we've been learning about the traditions of each of these cultures and like engaging with them and learning like their meaning and supporting them and all of this. And this is where we're confronted with a tradition that is damaging to the culture. Like, this is why Bakuljaja was the monster that he was and was so damaged, because he bore the weight of all of this on him. So yeah, two-headed Mamulja are in fact like just it's a horrifying tradition, and this is where we see like the downside of tradition, and is kind of Wuklamat's like final step in her journey, is being confronted by, after seeing all these good traditions that lifted people up and that were a positive part of cultures, being confronted with a tradition that is damaging to a culture and figuring out how do you address that. Like,
and something that's so still really intrinsic to the culture, but incredibly damaging.
Yeah.
Well, and there's also like this entire side piece of this culture, because they feel trapped down in this shadowy forest region where nothing really grows but the banana leaves. And they're jealous of those who get to live up in the sun.
Yeah. They're stuck in this dark forest where very little grows, and that's the reason for their conflict with the Brax in the past, was to try and get some more pleasant land. And apparently ever since then, so the Mamulja who are willing to accept Tural mostly moved to Tuliolal. So all the ones left here are the ones who rejected Tural and have basically been here stewing for 80 years, like wanting to, rise up and take something for themselves. And so we have to try and figure out what we're going to do about that. And at this point, Wuklamat has grown a lot over her journey. And so she sees this and says, okay, this is horrifying. We need to address the root causes. And so step one is find out what's wrong with the forest. Like, what can we do to help?
And it essentially drills down to basically an ethereal imbalance.
Yeah, basically the forest was bombarded by meteors long ago, and the radiation from those meteors has like irradiated the entire forest, and anything whose ether does not match that like frequency just does not grow well. And once we discover that, well, happily we have someone with us who knows a place where they have like all sorts of seeds of all sorts gathered together, and they know the exact ethereal makeup of all of these seeds. So they should be able to find some stuff that'll grow here just fine. It's good to have a gleaner along. And so once we've done this, we go into the cenote after Bakuljaja to basically try and help him. Like I'm trying to remember what exactly is our original goal, even going into Sky Deep Cenote, other than find Bakuljaja.
Oh, you don't go in there until after you do the trial.
Is that not after? That's right. That's right. We go down there. We don't actually go into the dungeon until after. We go down there before, and that's where Bakuljaja is like at the door into it, like basically just wallowing in grief, like that he failed ultimately, and that he, that all of this death was for nothing because of his failure. Like that's where he is at this point. And we are able to like basically, give him some hope that maybe there's another way. Because as it turns out, Bakuljaja was the anime first season villain who joins the team later on.
Yeah, oh, that's right, because we do meet somebody else at this point, too. Another former member of Bakuljaja's adventuring party.
Yes.
Yeah, because he kind of, I think, helps point us in the direction where we go into the dungeon.
That's right. Oh yes, because this is when we. So one of the things that we've been aware of, and that this was something that was like established way back, multiple expansions back, is that the New World was explored by a famous Rogadin explorer, who vanished, presumed lost at sea or died over there years ago. As it turns out, he's not dead. He's been here the whole time. He was one of Galul Jaja's traveling companions, and his part in this competition was basically to hang out near the Mamulja to make sure that they, kept up their end of the bargain.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's one of the guys that was with Galul Jaja in the whole original thing. It's we've seen like flashbacks to Galul Jaja's team, and it's very much like a group of members of all of the different cultures of Tyrol, plus this Rogadin, and also one of them is Erenville's mom. She's been mentioned off and on. Part of the reason Erenville is here is because long ago she was his mother and his mentor, and she tasked him long ago with finding the city of gold, and he ultimately kind of gave up / convinced himself that it wasn't like the city didn't really exist, and that it was basically like her telling him to go out and explore.
Mm-hmm.
And then on this whole adventure, he discovered that not only was it real, but that his mom was there.
Yeah,
he found it.
She's actually seen it, and so we befriend Bakul Jaja to a degree and get his support, and that gets the Mulja talking to us enough to help them out. And so then ultimately we go to face the trial, and this is when Koana is not allowed to help us because only one competitor can fight at a time. So Koana declares that he is withdrawing for the competition. And so he and Thancred and Urianger throw in with us to fight Galul Jaja at his height. Because
is this a different fight?
Yeah. Yeah, interestingly enough, this is not a trial. It is just like
a story mission.
It's a story mission, but with a group of NPCs with you. So it plays like a trial, despite not being one. But yeah, because Koana, like simultaneously with Wuklamat learning her lesson, Koana has also like learned and improved and has come to realize that the cultures of Tyrol have meaning and the traditions have meaning, and that just like coming in and wholesale replacing those with technology would not be the best way of going about things, and ultimately decides that Wuklamat is better suited to be ruler, and throws his lot in with her. And yeah, so we have the big fight with Galul Jaja.
Which beating up a shade of the past, which is significantly more powerful than the present version we fought a few levels ago.
Yeah, and we do see a lot of the same mechanics that we saw in that one-on-one duel, just amped up.
Way souped up.
Yep.
But we win, and Kettenram enforces the whole Keystone thing.
And also, and then, like, the Mamulja leader is kind of forced to confront, like, the horrors that have been perpetrated and that he was a part of. And so there is some hope that maybe he will attempt to make right, to make up for some of what he was a part of. And we go off to find the City of Gold, which
we have been told now is that near the bottom of Skydeep Cenote. So time to go into this very haunted place.
Yes, it's full of ghosts and horrors, and then machinery. Some of which is reminiscent of machinery that we've seen before, but not in the source.
Yeah. It very much looks Ronkin.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And as we start to see that machinery, we also start to see like more and more walls of like black stone with like purple lights running through it, and ultimately come to a gate. And and when activated, it's a gate in like a giant golden wall, and there's a seal over it that was placed there by Galul Jaja and his companions. And this is when we learn that when Galul Jaja was here before with Galuf, the gate opened and a couple of people came out of it.
We don't actually. I don't know if we learn it right here. Do
Is
we?
this not here? Oh no, you're right.
Takes
No.
a bit before we see this.
It's a
Right
little
here,
further.
it feels very odd in the story because right here, what we get is, oh hey,
There's a
you
gate.
found the entrance to the City of Gold. You won.
Congratulations,
Let's go.
you won.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
We're
guess
done
we'll
here.
go now.
that's right. Yeah, no,
Nothing
we
else
don't
to
actually.
see here.
Yeah, it's like okay, we completed the quest. Time to go back, and Buklamat gets to become the new Dawn servant.
And that is honestly probably a good place
Probably
to leave
is.
it for tonight
Because
because
there's
Yeah.
a lot of weird stuff coming.
yeah, and this is we did not even get as far as I thought we were going to get.
We got about as far as I thought we were going to get.
Anyway, so yeah, we'll do another one of these next week
At some
maybe.
point.
Because there's still 3 whole maps still to go at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
What an expansion!
It was great. But like I said, we'll have to cut it here, and we will, instead of doing what we used to do and recording like a 5-hour long show and editing it down to 2 shows, we're just gonna do it another
Not
night.
do that. Yeah.
Like I'm definitely too old for that now.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess we'll wrap it up. Any final thoughts anybody has?
The new classes are cool. The new role quests are kind of boring.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a
Pictomancer's-
fan.
Pictomaster's interesting. Viper's mostly just chasing a big scary thing. Realizing that people and capitalism are the true monsters.
Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See ya.